And now we continue to monitor the ongoing Munich conference, bringing together world leaders in Munich, Germany. Earlier this morning, the German Chancellor, Friedrich Merz, delivered the opening speech. And in his remarks, he discussed the return of big power politics as it relates to the United States and China, as well as Russia's war on Ukraine. He also discussed the NATO alliance. Most of his speech was delivered in German. However, in a clear message directed toward the United States, Merz switched to English and said this.
Let me paraphrase this for our American friends in English. For 3 generations, trust amongst allies, partners and friends has made NATO the strongest alliance of all times. Europe knows deeply how precious this is. In the era of great power rivalry, even the United States will not be powerful enough to go it alone. Dear friends, being a part of NATO is not only Europe's competitive advantage, it's also the United States' competitive advantage. So let's repair and revive transatlantic trust together.
Joining us now from Munich is the ranking member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, Senator Jeanne Shaheen of New Hampshire. I'm wondering what the response was in the room and what you were hearing there at the conference about the NATO alliance, about trust in the United States. Obviously, alliances are based on trust.
Well, I couldn't agree more with Chancellor Merz about the importance of the NATO alliance, important not just to European security, but to American security. I'm here with Thom Tillis, Republican from North Carolina. We co-chair the Senate NATO Observer Group. And part of the reason we're here is to reassure our allies in NATO how important we in Congress think NATO is. And we have a very large bipartisan delegation here from Congress. And part of the reason we wanted to be here is so we can reassure our allies what makes the United States so strong. And Chancellor Merz referred to this, is the fact that we have these allies and partners. As we look at the great power competition against China, we look at what's happening with Russia, with North Korea, with Iran, having allies and partners that we can count on is really important to our own security.
And, you know, one thing I didn't hear you mention, but I know you will, is Ukraine, which continues as we speak to get pummeled by Russian aggression. How to get Ukraine back into the mental space of this U.S. administration, standing up for the peace in the world, this country fighting for peace in the world. What's the discussion there about how the NATO alliance, its American partner, can focus on bringing this to an end, bringing this to a resolution that is positive?
Well, our European partners have really stepped up when it comes to Ukraine. Much of the support that the United States was providing to Ukraine is now being picked up by Europe. We know that Congress put back in $400 million to support Ukraine. We continue intelligence sharing with Ukraine, and Senator Murkowski and I have bipartisan legislation that would invest in Ukraine, because we understand that it is so important, not just to what happens in Ukraine, and we should all be grateful for the courageous Ukrainians who are willing to stand up to the Russians through this cold winter when they're being attacked, when they have no heat, and they're fighting for democracies everywhere. But Russia is not going to come to the table unless we put pressure on them. And what we know is that so far, Vladimir Putin is not serious about a peace agreement. And we need President Trump. We need the majorities in the House and Senate to be willing to put secondary sanctions on Russia, to give them arms and support that they need, because in this great power competition, China is watching what happens in Ukraine. And if we back off, if Ukraine has to fold to Russia, that's going to be a lesson that President Xi is going to take to Taiwan.
So, Senator, last time so many of these world leaders were in the same place was a few weeks ago at Davos. And the Davos gathering was dominated by discussions about President Trump's aims for Greenland. He hasn't backed off that, at least publicly. But talk to us about the aftershocks still being felt, because for so many leaders, particularly in NATO, across Europe, it felt like a really damaging blow to an alliance that has helped secure the world order now for 80-odd years.
Well, absolutely. I was with a bipartisan delegation in Copenhagen before Davos, and part of the reason we were there was to reassure our Danish partners and the Greenlanders that the United States supports the relationship. We understand that Denmark was one of the first countries to recognize the United States. We fought together in 2 world wars and deployments across the world in Afghanistan, where they lost per capita as many people as the United States did. So as you point out, once that trust gets broken, you have to work very hard to rebuild it. And we are here because we want to rebuild that trust, because we understand, as I said earlier, that it's not just important to Europe and to the transatlantic alliance, it's about America's security. There's a reason why support for NATO is at the highest point that it's been, I think, in its history in the United States among voters. And it's because voters are looking at the chaos and conflict in the world, and they understand that NATO helps make us safe.
Ranking member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, Democratic Senator Jeanne Shaheen of New Hampshire, live in Munich. Senator, thank you so much for joining us this morning.